Hey, how's it going, everybody? Scott Spreitzer here. He is Amal Shah, newest member of DocSports.com family. And we're going to be here each and every week throughout the college and pro football season with Against the Spread with Spreitzer and the Shah. Going to be talking some college football marquee matchups. We're going to be talking some midweek moves in the NFL. And I say midweek because after this video, after this show, we will be moving to Wednesdays every week, and that means you'll be able to see these shows on Wednesday nights, and we'll be talking midweek moves in pro football. Best bets from both of us at the end of the show today. But a real quick story about Amal Shah. Okay, first of all, he's a pro, as everybody knows who knows Amal. He's a pro poker player. He is a pro bettor, and I got to meet Amal 7 years ago, I'm going to say it was, when I started doing some shows with Visa in an afternoon show, and Amal was one of the hosts, and we immediately hit it off with our style of capping and all that kind of good stuff. And I tried to get him to listen to some punk rock from the 70s and 80s. And his response was, have you ever heard of the Four Guys from Liverpool? I'll never forget it. So anyway, it's good to have them all on board at DocSports.com looking for great things. Amal, there's not a lot of marquee matchups this week in college football, but one at the top is Alabama, Wisconsin. And as we speak, I got my line service in front of me here. Alabama, basically, for the most part, a 16.5-point favorite, that total around, 49.5. You guess how many, and you probably know this already, maybe not. I like this kind of trivia, but guess how many non-conference true road games Alabama has played since 2007?
I'm going to say this is their first one.
It's actually their fifth, but good
Oh,
guess.
fifth. Okay. I couldn't even remember the other ones because I remember they played against Michigan and Dallas. They played against West Virginia and Georgia in Atlanta. So I couldn't even remember some of the other ones that they've played.
Yeah, they've usually had their way with the schedule maker since Nick Saban was on the sideline. Not to take anything away from Nick, obviously one of the top three college football coaches in my lifetime. But the bottom line, it is just their fifth road game, true road game outside of conference play. And it's the first time in 13 years that they've been on the Big Ten road. So I got to toss this to you because Alabama's identity so far through the first couple of the games is not far off from what Nick Saban had them doing. They did struggle last week. They looked flat. They didn't get a great job done by the quarterback or the receiving room. They pulled away at the end against South Florida, misleading final score, but won the game even though they were only up 5 in the fourth quarter. But when you talk about identity, since Barry Alvarez came to Wisconsin as head coach, later on athletic director, and every coach that followed until Luke Fickell, we knew what Wisconsin was. I mean, just like we know the Steelers for the past 45 years, just like we knew the New York Islanders in the early 80s, we know what Wisconsin's all about. It's run the football first, stout defense, occasional passing with maybe an underrated quarterback, but they're struggling under this new coaching staff, including Phil Longo as offensive coordinator.
Yeah, you're right. Tyler Van Dyke comes in. He's a transfer, played previously at Miami. They've got a great running back in Ches Malusi, but I don't know if they're going to be able to sustain this team offensively. And I have some concerns with Luke Fickell long-term in Wisconsin if he's the right fit. If you realistically look at his career, he coached as an interim head coach at Ohio State in 2011 before Urban Meyer became the coach. He was 6-7. The Buckeyes hadn't had a losing season prior to that until 1988. So for me, when I look at it, I don't know if he's a guy that's a Power 5 head coach or now Power 4. At Cincinnati, he had great success. But when you step up in competition, Scott, it's a whole different ballgame. And we're starting to see a little bit of that. The challenge is there. Now, he's got an opportunity on Saturday to get a marquee win at home at Camp Randall. Used to be for a long time outside the top 10. In my estimation, somewhere between 11 and 25, probably one of the best home field advantages for teams that are not necessarily a top 10 team, but a top 20 team for sure. And they can take advantage of it, really get a marquee game. That would help them in terms of really moving things forward with Luke Fickell. On the flip side, we see Kalen DeBoer taking over for Bama. They don't look like they've skipped the beat offensively, but they were, as you said, flat in that game against South Florida. And if you didn't see the game, it was 21-16 with about 8 minutes to go in that fourth quarter. It was not a Bama easy win that you saw the final score reflect. They scored 3 touchdowns over the final 8 minutes. Give them credit for that. But still, I want to see Alabama put it together for 4 quarters. I didn't make a play on this game, Scott, but I'm going to tell you what, just based on the number alone, don't you feel like you have to look at the home dog? And if you get beat, you live with the result. But man, 16 on the road, on the road right now with Alabama, with a new coach, seems like a pretty big number.
Yeah, it does. And like you said, the new coaching staff, the offense wasn't great last week. There's sometimes when you look at their passing situation, I jotted down some notes about, when this particular quarterback, Jalen Milroe, has stepped up against quality defenses. We're talking Georgia, Michigan, and Texas in his collegiate career. He's not performed well. And in some cases, you could say he was bad for a good chunk of those games. So Wisconsin may not be at that level, but it's a pretty stout defense. I didn't make a play either, but I do have a lean, ever so slight lean on Wisconsin. Only reason I didn't pull the trigger on the Badgers is because they've gotten away from their identity of the past 35 years or so under the new coaching staff. Boston College at Missouri. Now, this is a top 25 clash, these two teams, which we might not have thought BC was going to be there before the season began. Had the fantastic performance against Florida State a couple of weeks ago. I actually played Missouri over their wins total. And I know the people that don't like that play were saying before the season, well, all those close calls that they won last year, but they bring back so much on offense. I mean, good offensive line. They can run, great quarterback. To me, the best receiving room in the entire country in college football. And at the same time, Amal, we know what Bill O'Brien's going to do. He's going to go four quarters on us, to use a basketball term from back in the day. He's going to slow the tempo. That's what he does. Rely on his defense. Try to run the football. Your thoughts on this one?
Well, look, I like this Missouri team. You look at Cook; he's been outstanding so far this season. It's early on, but I mean, he doesn't have a ton of touchdown passes, but the efficiency, 48 for 67 throwing the football, that's the biggest thing. You look at Theo Weiss, the Oklahoma transfer; he comes in there. Luther Burden has gotten off to a flourishing start, but we'll start to see more of him as we go through the season. Mookie Cooper there as well. They've got some talent on this team. There's no question about it on the perimeter. I don't know if I'm ready to sign off with you on having the best receiving core in the country, but I do agree with you. They are elite and they are lethal. On the flip side, they've got back-to-back shutouts. The defense has gotten off to a fast start. But now you're going to play a quarterback in Castellanos. I call him a poor man's Kyler Murray. Similar build, similar frame, good quickness and mobility, particularly on third down. And you're catching 16, 16 and a half, maybe 17 in this game. Seems like a pretty big number. We know Missouri can score, but will they be able to slow down BC enough? And I think there's just an incredible amount of confidence in Boston College right now. Going down to the Doak at Tallahassee, getting that road win outright as a 17-point underdog. To me, going into Columbia, the challenge will be there. I don't think they're going to win the football game like they did against Florida State, but I think they can keep this thing within the number. I like the way this Boston College offense is performing. I think they've got a good opportunity here. It should be a little bit of a higher scoring game, but I think BC can stay with them, not necessarily step for step, but within the number, what's most important for us.
I think their style of O'Brien playing that slow it down type of football, taking, almost the entire game clock between plays, the play clock, I should say. And the fact that, again, it is over 2 touchdowns, as you mentioned, 16. I lean BC, and I also kind of like the under here. I think if they have success, I think they'll have success, not win outright, but have success here, that clock will keep moving and that total won't get there when it comes to getting to 54. I'm sitting there earlier this week and I'm looking at the schedule. I'm all, as we were talking earlier this week, and like, God, there's just no marquee matchups. So for me, it was like, should we talk Apple Cup, which usually we used to at the end of the year, or should we talk Civil War, which we used to talk about at the end of the year? And here it is, only week 2, week 3 of college and pro football, and we're talking Oregon State, Civil War time. And the reason I thought this would be more interesting than Washington against Wazoo is because Oregon has not looked anything like not only a college football championship contending team, but not even a top 10 or 15 college football team thus far. They're laying 16 in this one at Oregon State. Your thoughts?
Well, first of all, I want to say this, Scott. I didn't believe the Ducks were as good as people thought coming into the season. I thought they lost too much talent. You lose a first-round quarterback in Bo Nix. You lose Tez Johnson. I thought there was just too much of a loss in terms of talent overall. But to me, when I look at the team, Bucky Irving in the backfield, it's just too many pieces have been gone. Look, Dylan Gabriel's done a nice job, but they were fortunate, if we're being realistic, to escape that game against Boise State. They could have lost it just as easily as they won it. They struggled against the Idaho Vandals. Look, for people that don't follow college football that closely, Idaho used to be in Division I. The Kibbe Dome was a place you'd go in and you just run up the score. The Vandals were within 10 points, or actually within 3 points with about 8 minutes to go in the fourth quarter in Autzen Stadium. There is a problem with this Oregon team. They're not as good as maybe the perception is. Now you're playing a rival. I get Oregon State is not as good as we've seen in years past. Jonathan Schmidt moves on to Michigan State. So there's a concern from that standpoint. But the rivalry is still the rivalry. And I think that's going to help Oregon State in this particular matchup. Dylan Gabriel, his numbers are good, but he hasn't impressed me. He hasn't done things that you want to see. If Giovanni McCoy can get this team going in the right direction, I think they've got a chance. I don't think they're going to be able to win the game, but I'm going to tell you, Scott, we've talked about 3 games so far, and the numbers all seem pretty high on the dogs. I think the favorites are being overvalued just based on brand name more than anything else at this point in time. And not Missouri being a complete brand name, but based on their ranking, number 6 in the country. BC not getting enough respect in my estimation. Same thing here. The rivalry matters. Yes, Oregon has been dominant for the most part in this series, but still, Oregon State is capable of keeping this game probably within the 14 or 15 points, depending on where you see the number. I think it went as high as 16. But for me, no way I'm laying it with the Ducks on the road. Dan Lanning's team's got to show me something. I get he's got a lot of hype. He's done a great job recruiting, but I got to see the finished product on the field.
Yeah, I agree with you again. I mean, we're either going to do real well on the show this week in college or not. But the bottom line is, it's been a low as 14 this week. Currently, it sits at 16, Oregon, in this game. And I watched both games, most of the 2 games that Oregon has played thus far. That offensive line looks rough. I mean, they've given up, 7 sacks in 2 games. They gave up 5 sacks all of last season, Amal. So it's a team that is struggling up front in pass blocking. And I did see an article that I thought made a pretty good point, which said if Giovanni McCoy was still the Idaho quarterback, they probably would have beat the Oregon Ducks, despite the crazy numbers as far as Oregon have the big advantage in yardage. Well, Giovanni McCoy, as you mentioned, is now playing in Corvallis, and he's with Oregon State. Now, he did get banged up a little bit last week. Last I saw, he was kind of going from questionable to probable. The good thing about OSU, they've got a couple of running backs, 2 of them, with more than 200 yards each, and both are averaging over 5.5 yards per pop. So I think if they can stay balanced, if Giovanni McCoy is able to stay healthy in this game and play the full game, I do believe they're going to be able to cover this number against the Oregon Ducks. And they've covered against and made it tough on better Oregon versions than we see so far this season. I want to talk some NFL, and what Amal and I are going to do each and every week starting next week, and again, we'll be on Wednesday evenings, is we're going to look at some of the lines in the NFL that have changed by midweek, by Wednesday afternoon, the most, and where the betting has kind of fallen on those games. And to kick things off, we got a game that's been all over the place, Amal, and that would be the Raiders and the Ravens. The Ravens were 8.5. They got up to 10. As of Thursday morning, they were 10 in some spots. Well, they're back down to 8.5. Even saw some 8s popping up as we were getting ready to record this show. Now, I believe you have a personal premium play on this game, which is over at DocSports.com. Is that correct?
I do. I got a big play on this one. I got a 6-unit play on this one, so I'm not going to give you a side on this one. But tell you what, it's an interesting matchup for sure. This is something to pay attention to, and I think there's components that you see in this matchup that I think people can apply to some of the other matchups as we go forward.
Yeah, I tell you, when I look at this, I'm like, I have a hard time with Pierce as the head coach, being named as the head coach. That doesn't mean they can't go into Baltimore and cover this number and make it a tight game, but that's just my feeling about this hire. And, it's been one of those things where Mark Davis has just made some weird decisions since they moved to Las Vegas, even before that. But as far as this game is concerned, as of Thursday morning, the Raiders were getting a ton of public action, believe it or not. The couple of books I checked with, it was upwards of 70% of the tickets written on the Raiders, but there was like 70% of the money at the time, and this is a few hours ago on Thursday, 70% of the money was on Baltimore. Lamar Jackson is listed as probable. I was watching John Harbaugh, I think it was on Tuesday, talking about the fact that Lamar didn't show up for practice on Monday. Now, Lamar has that leeway if he's not feeling good, but that was 4 days after the Kansas City game, and yet he was still unable to practice. I think he's going to go. I think we'll see kind of a get back to Ravens football this week. They dropped back no less than 51 times in that game against Kansas City. That's not Raider football. They've got a great running back. They've got a decent enough offensive line. So I expect them to get back to normal. And I also think you saw Lamar, he wanted to win that game so bad against KC that he didn't. He ran the ball more than he would in most games. And he better start sliding if he's going to run that much, because he got knocked all over the place. They almost beat KC, but they came up short. But again, that's one of Amal's, that's 6-unit play in the NFL this week. So check out all of his plays over at DocSports.com. And we'll tell you what both of us have going this week over at Doc Sports a little bit later in the show when we get to best bets. The Colts are at Green Bay. All the Colts laying 2.5 as we speak, total 40.5. And I wanted to talk about this game because we saw the big line adjustment. Jordan Love goes down to injury last week. Got good news in that He's probably not going to be out all that long, maybe 3 to 4 weeks. We saw the coaches come out from Green Bay and not even say he wasn't going to play this week. I think it would be foolish if he's 75, 80%, even that, and they decided to play him in a week 2 game against Indy. I think that'd be a huge mistake. So I don't think they will. But real quick, betting on this game, Amal, the Pack were a 4-point favorite, as we know, before that loss to Philly, before he got injured, Love. 60% on Thursday morning of the public on Indy and about 52% of the money, but it did get as high as 3. Late in the day, it started coming back down to 2.5.
Yeah, for me, the key is Josh Jacobs. He's got a back injury. His status, he didn't practice yesterday, so I'm a little bit concerned there. But if he's a guy who can go, I like Green Bay here, Scott. Look, I get that the Colts were competitive at home. Anthony Richardson had 2 spectacular plays, but if you look at his numbers, 9 for 19. This is a guy during his career at Florida completed less than 60% of his passes. He will throw some balls sometimes where you're like, gosh, I wish he didn't throw that one up. The running game is there with Jonathan Taylor, but I just don't believe in the Colts maybe as much as some other people do in terms of what they think they're going to be in the AFC South. I think Green Bay is still a pretty good football team, even without having Jordan Love in the lineup. I am concerned about Malik Willis, but I think if you look at this from a Green Bay standpoint, you try to get him some short, quick throws, you run some screen and other things that will get him some confidence early on. You involve Josh Jacobs. You don't take any unnecessary risk from an offensive standpoint. And then defensively, I think they're confident and comfortable in trying to slow down this Indianapolis team. Yeah, they struggled against Philadelphia, but that's a different animal there. You've got Saquon Barkley, A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, and, of course, Jalen Hurts. I don't see the Colts having that type of efficiency. I tell you right now, for me, Scott, aside from liking the Packers, especially if you can get +3, I like Anthony Richardson to throw a pick in this game.
I'm with you, man. I'm on Green Bay. I think this is a good play here. If you looked at what happened last week with Indy, they struggled against the run. They didn't exactly pile up their points with sustained drives. They came in other fashions, a couple of big plays. Both of these teams outgained their opponents by about a 7 to 5 yards per play margin, by almost 2 yards per play as a positive margin. But I think Malik Willis is going to get a game plan from a really good coaching staff that can hold serve here. And I just think that number has been adjusted too much. There's been a little temptation on my part, actually, to jump in here and play the money line with Green Bay. I haven't done that yet, but it's a possibility out there where I might pull the trigger. But we're both on Green Bay here, plus the points over Indy.
Scott, if I may just add real quick on your point on the money line. I like your call on the money line here because I'm with you. I think Green Bay is going to win this game. But I'll tell you, for me, I'm a big proponent of it. Anything at 2.5 or less, I'm just an auto money line guy. And so if it doesn't get to 3 and I end up on the Packers with you, I will be on the money line as well. Just, if you get the 3, I tend to take the 3 in the NFL. College, you can go differently. But I think when you get +2.5 and now all of a sudden you get +115, 120, I like the plus money instead of laying the -110.
Yeah, it's kind of that way with me too. And, down to 2.5, I think taking them on the money line is the way to go. Listen, by the way, I know we got a couple more games to talk about here, but I wanted to mention that if you do have anything that's over on your premium page over at DocSports.com, just let me know. So anyway, the Niners at Minnesota next. San Francisco down to 5 at this point. They've been as much as a 6.5-point favorite. They dropped under 5 in a few shops earlier this week. They're now up to 5 down to 5 after moving all the way to 5.5 a couple of days ago. And believe it or not, I was looking at the stats, the betting stats on this one Thursday, probably about noon Pacific time. And again, I saw the fact that the public was all over Minnesota. The money sided with the Niners. But again, as we got later in the day on Thursday, that number did drop again from 5.5 down to 5 in several shops. So listen, for me, San Francisco, they were nearly perfect in that win over the Jets on Monday night. Unfortunately for me, I had the Jets, but that defense got shredded. Didn't even need CMC, didn't need McCaffrey. They just did what they wanted up front in the trenches. But I don't want to overreact to near perfection. I mean, I probably should have thought about that game differently because I had Shanahan with 6 weeks to prep, and I had Robert Saleh with 6 weeks to prep. You're supposed to take Shanahan in that kind of a coaching matchup. Minnesota outgained the Giants by 2.5 yards per play last week. Tough game, maybe. I mean, Darnold, it's a situation where he was terrific in week 1. Can he do it 2 weeks in a row? Can Aaron Jones continue to run well? I think they fit inside this number, Amal. I like the points here with Minnesota.
I got no problem with that. For me, this game is a hard pass. I think San Francisco looked great. They looked like they were in midseason form to start the season. I thought Brock Purdy was outstanding. But, quietly, I thought the loss of J.J. McCarthy benefited Minnesota in this season. Long term,
Mhm.
obviously, it's not what you want. You want your franchise quarterback to be the guy there. But I think Sam Darnold, he's two things. Obviously, he has a propensity to turn the ball over. But most importantly, he's got to limit the fumbles. If he can do that, I think this team's got an opportunity to be competitive. They played a good game. They played a complete game, but it was against the Giants. Let's see what happens. They're at home, which is generally one of the better home field advantages in the National Football League. This is a pretty big number. Remember last year, Minnesota beat San Francisco on Monday Night Football. So I don't think the Niners are going to come in taking this game lightly at all by any stretch. And not to suggest or imply anybody in the NFL does anytime, but just when you have a type of matchup, sometimes human nature kicks in. But I get where you're coming from. I thought this game was a tough game to call. I can make an argument multiple ways on both sides here. But in the NFL, whenever you're kind of at a coin toss situation or if you're looking to make a play, I tend to err on the side of taking the points. I think the points have more value in the National Football League, and a team catching 4.5 at home as a dog, generally speaking, long term, you'll be much more profitable with them in that spot.
He's Amal Shah, and we are against the spread at DocSports.com with Spreitzer and the Shah. Going to get to a couple more games and best bets in a moment. But if you're wondering, if you're new to this and you're wondering what that banner is at the top of your screen where it says get a free $60 account, folks, what you can do is simple. If you're not yet a member at DocSports.com, you just want to give it a trial run, you click on the link below the video, get yourself set up for that free $60 account, and then you can use those free $60 on any of Amal's daily packages or any of mine, again, over at DocSports.com. Let's jump back into it. I guess marquee matchup, or one of the couple of marquee matchups on the card this week, Cincinnati at Kansas City. KC currently laying 6 with a total of 48. This line originally was 3.5, jumped all the way up to 6 now. KC, of course, the favorite. The thing that makes it tough for me, and I look at this game and I'm thinking, boy, I really do want to back Cincy here. After watching what happened in KC, they were able to pull out the win. After watching how bad Cincinnati was offensively last week, I thought, boy, this looks like a great chance to back the Bengals. Here's a couple of quick notes that makes it tough. Cincinnati under Zach Taylor, he's going into his 6th season now, lost last week. His team is 1-10 in the first 2 weeks of the season since he's been the head coach after last week's embarrassing loss. I mean, it wasn't like they gained 400 yards to 200 for New England, but turned the ball over a bunch. They only gained 74 yards rushing. They only gained 164 yards through the air on about 5.5 yards per attempt. I believe, at least until they can find that ground game, they really miss Joe Mixon. Not only running the football, but coming out of the backfield for some dump offs and passes that he can turn a 2-yard pass or a slant pass into an 8 to 10 yard gain with some decent blocking. I do believe he's missed. I'll tell you what I did here, Amal. I ended up playing Isaiah Pacheco over 63.5 yards rushing. KC, even though they weren't top-notch A-plus level on the offensive line last week, that was against Baltimore. If they want to get back to KC football completely, Pacheco's got to get more than 13, 14, 15 carries. And then, of course, their interior offensive line is strong. Cincy's interior defensive front, not so strong. So I played Pacheco over 63.5 rushing yards.
I really like that call. By the way, you stole my thunder on the Joe Mixon comments because I agree with you completely. Well, I didn't know why Cincinnati didn't re-sign him. He goes for $159 in the opener for Houston. They give up 120 yards on the ground to Ramondre Stevenson. Here's the point why I really like your play of 63.5. Late in the game, when Cincinnati needed stops, and you knew they weren't going to throw the ball with Brissett, they were handing the ball off to Stevenson. He's going up the middle because they didn't want to take a chance of bouncing it outside, getting stopped out of bounds, and stopping the clock. They still couldn't stop him. He was still getting 4 or 5 yards per carry, and that's a real indictment of the Cincinnati team. I'll tell you another thing, Scott, for me. I like the Chiefs in this game. They're at home, and a couple of factors. I might be a little long-winded here, so I apologize.
No
You have
problem.
an opportunity to stamp out 2 teams in the AFC in a head-to-head standing. Baltimore, you've already beaten, and now you've got a chance with Kansas City. Then you got Buffalo, Miami, and Houston, maybe Jacksonville. Those are probably 4 teams, and maybe the Jets. Those are some teams that you would be looking at that you would face off against to have home field advantage. But you get this win. The Bengals are looking at 0-2. You've got already a 2-game lead, in essence, on Baltimore because you've already won the head-to-head, and you want to know they're 0-1. But for me, the biggest thing is this Cincinnati team just is not as good as people think they are. T. Higgins is banged up. He's got some health concerns right now going into this matchup. They struggled throwing the ball. They were inconsistent. You mentioned it. Zach Taylor's record early on has always been bad. I think this team should play more guys during the preseason, help them get situated and get ready to go. Defensively, I don't know where they're at because New England was very conservative and still Cincinnati couldn't slow them down when necessary. Now, they did miss some opportunities in the red zone, could have potentially gotten them a win. They had a turnover, a drop pass. All those things factored in. Joe Burrow looked decent. He didn't look great. I mean, it's not a guy that you look at times we'd argue is the second best quarterback in the NFL behind Patrick Mahomes. There's a lot of question marks for me. And I think the one thing that is a misnomer with Kansas City is, yes, they have a good offense. They have a great offense with Patrick Mahomes. But this team can run the football and they can play defense. I think the Kansas City Chiefs right now might be the most complete they've been in the Andy Reid era. And Scott, I got to tell you, I don't generally like laying this type of number in a game like this, but I'm going to lay it here with Kansas City. I think they're the better team. They're in a good spot. I might have a different perspective if this game were played in Week 8 or Week 9. But right now, based on the way Jamar Chase and T. Higgins are looking, this Bengals offense, and you said it, I'm going to reiterate it. I don't get why they let Mixon walk. He's tremendous out of the backfield. His ability to run the ball between the tackles. I mean, I was going to say Jerome Fordy's with the Browns, but I look at this running game for the Bengals. I'm not impressed. And it's just not a team right now that's complete and good enough to be able to go on the road and score 21 to 24 points.
Yeah, next up, Sunday Night Football, the Bears. Oh, by the way, about that game, I talked about Zach Taylor and the slow starts for Cincy since he's been head coach. Not so much of a slow start for Andy Reid in Kansas City. 34-11 is their outright record in the month of September. So you've got that going for you too. You've got a coach that has his team ready from the get-go against another team who struggles until they get 3-4 games into the season. Sunday Night Football, Bears at Houston. Houston laying 6, 45.5. Houston was as low as 3.5 a couple of weeks ago, 4.5 last weekend, up to 6 now. I do have a personal play, premium play, I should say, over at DocSports.com on my homepage on this game. But I will say this, I was congratulating people for cashing with the Bears last week, all right? Maybe it's a little bit of sour grapes and all, but I made a play on Tennessee a few minutes before kickoff. And there was a nice stat that is no longer in place that Will Levis and Tennessee blew, and that's that before that game, Chicago and Tennessee, NFL dogs of 4 or more points that led by at least 17 points at any juncture in an NFL game, well, they were 61-1-1 against the spread. Titans blew that up. Public on the Bears in this one, money on the Texans. I've got a play on this game, a premium play. I don't know. I believe you might have a play on this one too from talking to you a little bit earlier.
I do. You can go check it out at DocSports.com. And I'll tell you what, Scott, a couple things getting back to the Tennessee play. I had a play the other day in baseball where I got extremely lucky. And I thought I was on the wrong side in terms of, even though I got the win, I was on the wrong side. And it's the same thing here with this Tennessee play. You're on the correct side in my estimation. But a friend of mine sent me a text, and he's right about this. He's a Bears fan. He said, Will Levis just threw the worst interception I've seen in the last 5 years. And I think that's an accurate statement. If you've got to rely on a block punt in the NFL for a touchdown, a interception return for a touchdown, 2 field goals of 48 and 50 yards, you get inside the red zone one time, and that's how you're winning the football game. Boy, you talk about doing it by smoke and mirrors, and that's exactly what the Bears did in that game. The bigger thing for me is how does that affect Will Levis in Tennessee going forward? Because that play, if he doesn't make it, I don't know if they would have been able to get into field goal range coming down the field because Caleb Williams, there's still a long way to go before we look at him and say, hey, he's on a pretty good trajectory. I just want to ask you real quickly, just long-term prognosis. What do you think about Caleb Williams? Where do you see him? And then on the flip side, C.J. Stroud, the quarterback for the Texans, how do you rate him in the NFL right now already?
Yeah, C.J. Stroud. I mean, the guy had such a fantastic maturity level from day one with a great fit. I mean, I love the coaching staff. His head coach was one of my favorite defensive coaches in the last 10, 15 years when he was calling the shots on defense for San Francisco a couple years ago. Great hire, great staff. He fits in well. They've recruited well. It's funny when you talk about quarterbacks and where they land them all out of college, because I go back to like David Carr, going to the Houston Texans way back in the day. They had a completely brand new offensive line for this poor kid who has a really good college career. If he goes to New England and Tom Brady goes to Houston, maybe New England doesn't have the type of success that they did with the Brady-Belichick combo. But I bet you David Carr lasts longer and wins a few more games and gets deep into the playoffs, where Brady would have struggled like any other quarterback with that offensive line being brand new and being terrible with the bad coaching staff in Houston. So nowadays, I think, Houston's fantastic. They might be really good for the next decade with this quarterback and this staff. Caleb Williams, man, it's like, boy, I think I might have overrated him a little bit coming out because I saw immaturity going into that game before the contest. Of course, I didn't play Chicago last week, like I mentioned. I had Tennessee. But going into last week's game, I thought he made some just immature young statements that you don't need to make going into that contest. And then I thought his play was extremely immature. And he also looked like he struggled with the quickness, the uptick of speed going from college to the NFL. And the guy hasn't taken many snaps, if you look at the injuries that he's had, plus now in the NFL. Long term, I'm going to say I'm not sure to make a statement yet on Caleb Williams. He does have to mature. Oh, my God, C.J. Stroud through the roof. Michael Dowd is one of the best 10 quarterbacks we'll see over the next 8 to 10 years. Amal, my thoughts on that.
Yeah, I love that point you made on both quarterbacks there. And, I'm really glad you brought up the David Carr one because I actually just talked to somebody recently about 3 days ago, and I said David Carr would have had a different career if he had a team around him. Gave up 98 sacks his rookie year, and that was detrimental to his future success. Make the same argument for Tim Couch potentially as well. So sometimes I always say this, the quarterback is like the president of the United States. I don't care what side you're on, but you either get too much blame and too much credit. Things are going good, you get the credit as a quarterback, and sometimes you get too much blame as a quarterback. And so to me, I think, Caleb Williams, we got to see something with him going forward. Stroud, I'll tell you right now, nobody's happier that Dak Prescott just signed for $60 million a year because C.J. Stroud is like, I got another 4 years before I become technically a free agent. I'm going to break the bank.
Absolutely. We're going to get to best bets in just a moment. One best bet from each of us. Amal, before we do that, let everybody know what they're going to find when they go to your homepage at DocSports.com this week.
Yeah, check it out. A ton of college football and NFL. Got 5 plays this weekend, including a 7-star in college football and 2 6-stars in the in the NFL. So had some great success so far starting out. I'm going to tell you right now, Scott, not to be boastful about myself, but everybody was on Florida. And I was like, I'm sorry. Miami is a good football team with a better quarterback and better lines. They go into the swamp and absolutely just curb stomp them. Yeah. And then, of course, had Kansas City in the opener against the Baltimore Ravens. So maybe a little bit fortuitous there, but I thought they were the more dominant team throughout that game. So got a big 7-star playing college football this week. And I'll just give you one clue. It is an underdog on the road that even though they're catching points and quite a few points, I think they got a shot to pull the outright upset.
All right, good stuff. You know what? I won last week in college. I lost last week in the NFL, as Ricky Ricardo would say. And holy crap, does anybody under 40 watching this know who Ricky Ricardo is? But as Ricky Ricardo would say, I got some splaining to do about last week's NFL. It was not a good week 1 for me. We did cash in college football last week, had a top play release on Michigan State. They went in and got the outright win over the Maryland Terrapins. This week I've got 6 plays, 3 in college, 3 in the NFL. By the way, real quick, because you're probably going to be watching this after kickoff, folks, one of the 3 plays, but it was a small play, was on the Thursday night college football game. So there's actually 5 plays left for me Saturday and Sunday. I've got a 6-star Saturday college football play. I've got a 6-star Sunday NFL play. So 433 and 305 is the long-term NFL run. We'll look to get back on track after last week. All right, I'm going to go with the best bet here, Amal. I'm going to back Green Bay. I do like them. You know what? My thoughts are this. For the best bet, take the 2.5 points, sprinkle a little bit of that on the money line. And I'll leave it at that because we've already talked about the game. Thoughts and your best bet?
For me, I'm going to go with the Kansas City Chiefs. I think they're a more complete football team. I think Cincinnati. Scott, I'm going to tell you right now, I'm going to give you a quick prediction. I don't think the Bengals are going to make the playoffs this year.
Oh, wow. Okay. That's bold prediction. I like that because, most folks are talking about Cincy vying for the AFC Championship game. And so that's a bold prediction. I like that, coming out swinging. But Cincinnati, listen, I have no action on the Bengals and Chiefs. I'll be rooting for you. I lean towards KC as long as you root, and I know you will because you like them too, the Green Bay Packers, plus the 2.5.
I like the Packers. I'm going to tell you, for me personally, I'm going to wind up on the game. If it goes to 3, I'll take the 3, but I will tell you, and I might regret it, but if it's 2.5, I'm going to be money line all day.
I'm going to explain this close to Amal in just a minute after we get off the air. Hopefully everybody over 40 will know this and a few people under 40. But as I wrap up the first episode of Against the Spread with Spreitzer and the Shah, and we'll be every Wednesday night, Thursday throughout the rest of the college and pro football season. Good night, Billy Zoom, wherever you are. Goodbye, 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 goodbye.